His international career started off so badly that people threatened him and in fact followed him all the way to his house in India. Here's a man who over the last year has become India's wildcard in the white ball format. In the T20s since 2024, he's picked up 38 wickets in just 18 games, which means he's picking up more than 2 wickets in a single game of T20I cricket. In fact, his T20 performances were so good that he eventually got pushed into the Indian team for the ODI format, where in the Champions Trophy, he was the highest wicket taker as India went on to win that tournament as well. And this isn't a story of overnight success. In fact, it is one with a lot more failure than happy days, but eventually it is the story of someone who's been able to put their bad things behind them and come out on top. And of course, you would have guessed it, this is the evolution of Varun Chakravarthy. Before we get into his numbers, his technique and his overall stats and how he's been able to turn it around, hit that subscribe button, and here's a video from our membership trailer. But nobody knew about a Rachel Hayhoe Flint, for example. So
people always talk about how the first World Cup's always been the 75 World Cup and the next World Cup 79 and whatever. But no one talks about how 2 years before was actually the first ever World Cup, and it happened to be the Women's World Cup in 73.
But yeah, this was the first few documented games of cricket. Married women versus single women. Just take a moment for that to sink in.
Reason we bowl overarm or round arm or whatever, we don't bowl underarm or chuck the ball or any of that, was because of just one woman. It's not even a team of women, or it's not even a game or a match. It was a cricketer's sister that started this. And then we see the women's game disappearing for more than 60 years.
And what he had to say, this is his assessment, that cricket was, quotes, not a game for women. Looking at his overall career, you might not firstly see why Varun Chakravarthy is so highly rated. In the 24 T20Is that he's played, he's got 40 wickets at an economy of 6.89. Now, these are brilliant numbers, but you might feel that the sample size is extremely small. Even just the 4 ODIs that he's played, he's got 10 wickets with a fifer, but more importantly, it came during the Champions Trophy. And at the age of 34, you might think that he's more or less done with his international playing days. But if you've been following Indian cricket, you know that's definitely not the case. And in fact, he's one of the best spinners in the country at the moment. What makes him different is the simple fact that he is a mystery spinner. For the longest time, we've seen a lot of mystery spinners from across the world, the likes of an Ajanta Mendis or a Sunil Narayan, just to name a few, but India was looking for its very own mystery spinner. Of course, you had a little bit of mystery in terms of bowlers who could use the carom ball, but Varun Chakravarthy was a completely new kind of mystery. Not a lot of people know if he's an off spinner or a leg spinner, but one thing that you can be certain with him is that he will always get you wickets and keep things really tight. And there's a lot of stories around how he was a fast bowler and then a wicketkeeper and a lot of things before he eventually settled into playing the role of a mystery spinner. But we won't go that far back. We will focus on how his domestic career picked up, how he got picked for the IPL and how his career progressed from there. And this is where we start off things in 2018. When he was picked for the Tamil Nadu Premier League, he was one of the most sought after spinners during that period in Tamil Nadu, and he eventually got to be a part of the Madurai Panthers. The Madurai Panthers also went on to win that season, but for Varun Chakravarthy, it was a breakout season in the TNPL. However, this breakout did not come in the form of a lot of wickets, but instead it was in terms of how the batters were just unable to pick him and how tight he kept things. In the 10 matches that he played in the tournament, he got just 9 wickets, but he bowled his entire quota of 40 overs, 4 overs in each game with an economy of 4.7. This was of course the best economy rate in the tournament, and it was enough to get a lot of eyeballs on this man. It was also the right time and the right place because right after this TNPL, he got picked for the List A squad for Tamil Nadu in the Vijay Hazare Trophy of 2018. And this is where he kind of shot into the limelight. He impressed, ending as the second highest wicket taker of the tournament. In just the 9 matches that he played, Varun Chakravarthy picked up 22 wickets at an economy of 4.2. These are unreal numbers, especially at that time in white ball cricket in the 50-over format, and just his wicket-taking ability, which was not visible in that TNPL, was on display here. The added fact that this was a poor season for Tamil Nadu, where they finished 5th on the table in their very group, meant that his performance was a lot more highlighted as well. And this is where IPL teams also started taking interest in Varun Chakravarthy. He was already a net bowler for various IPL teams, but it was in 2019 when he got picked for Kings 11 Punjab and only turned up in one game for them. Call it a coincidence or irony, this one game that he played, his debut match, came against his future franchise, the Kolkata Knight Riders. This was also the last IPL before COVID hit in 2020, and so we were going to have the next leg of the IPL in 2020 in Dubai. The fact that the IPL in 2020 was in UAE definitely proved to be quite the blessing for Varun Chakravarthy. He ended up as the highest wicket taker for the Kolkata Knight Riders that that season, getting 17 wickets in just the 13 matches. What, however, stood out once again was how economical this man was. Going at just 6.8 runs to the over, the batters found it extremely difficult to put Varun Chakravarthy away. In a side that at that time boasted of spinners like Kuldeep Yadav and Sunil Narayan, Varun Chakravarthy was shining a lot brighter than both of these spinners. He also continued to impress in the very next season of the IPL as well, where in 17 games he picked up 18 wickets and once again at an even better economy rate of just 6.5. In fact, across the IPLs of 2020 and 2021, he was also in the top 10 most economical bowlers in the IPL. And with all of these things going in his favour, the fact that he performed well in the TNPL in 2 IPLs back to back, and even the fact that he was playing list A cricket for Tamil Nadu, meant that it was only going to be a matter of time before he got that initial India call-up for the T20 format. And that's exactly what happened in 2021 when he made his debut for India against Sri Lanka in the T20 series. And from there, he was also picked for the World Cup that was to take place that very year. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, this is where things started to go downhill for Varun Chakravarthy. In that 2021 period, he ended up playing 6 T20Is, 3 in the Sri Lanka series and 3 in the World Cup, and he ended up taking just 2 wickets. While he was still fairly economical, it was clear that he was not the man who was able to break partnerships in the middle overs. It also didn't help that India themselves had a terrible campaign in the 2021 T20 World Cup. But sure, from there you think that he would be able to go back to the IPL, hone his skill and then come back stronger. But that was definitely not the case. The IPL of 2022 saw Varun Chakravarthy have his worst season so far. In the 11 matches that he played, he picked up just 6 wickets, but he also was expensive, going at 8.5 runs to the over. Of course, one of the reasons was that the IPL was back in India and the tracks to play on were just a lot more batting friendly. But even apart from all of this, a lot of people found out that Varun Chakravarthy had just changed and no longer had the same kind of fizz. There were multiple things that were coming to light, like his struggle when it comes to varying the pace of a delivery, him not being able to maintain the speeds that he used to when he started off. For instance, in the IPLs of 2020 and 2021, he was able to consistently ball around that 90 to 95 km per hour mark. However, in the IPL of 2022, he did get slower than that, and more importantly, he also lost his length. He had started to ball a lot more full length deliveries and the batters could just pick him easily. At this point, Varun Chakravarthy was also trying a sort of delivery where he would just give it a lot more air. But this meant that his mystery factor completely went away. The batters were able to either go back in their crease or just had enough time to be able to figure out the spin and play the bowler. This is where we dive a little bit into his technique and his variations. Now, one thing you need to know about Varun Chakravarthy when he came into the format was that he already had a lot of variations. He had a leg break, he had a googly, of course had some kind of carom ball as well, but it was mostly his googly that the batters found tough to pick. At this point, Varun Chakravarthy was a lot more reliant on an aspect in leg break known as side spin. Now, what happens in side spin is that the bowler is delivering the ball with an intent to be able to spin the ball a lot more laterally. And what that means is that at the time of release, the ball is possibly coming out like that. In the case of Varun Chakravarthy, it means that it is going counterclockwise, and which means that the ideal purpose of that ball is to be able to pitch and move from right to left. Even if you have a glance at his action, you will see that it is slightly different as compared to the present day. It just feels like at a first glance that there's just not enough body moving into that action. And towards 2022, what had also started to happen was that Varun Chakravarthy was no longer able to get as much side spin on the ball as he used to when he started off. Now, one of the reasons that Varun thinks this was the case was because he is someone who grew up playing a lot of tennis ball cricket. And when it came to competitive cricket played with a leather ball, his body over time was just fatigued because of how much he was bowling, and he was missing out on simple basics like getting his run up right or being able to spin the ball. Now, because of the fact that his side spin was affected, it meant that his leg breaks and his googlies just become less potent. Because as a batter, if you know that his leg break isn't going to turn, you just ensure that you cover your stumps for the googly. And so through this, we've been able to establish how Varun Chakravarthy's initial years went and what the technical problem could have been that led to him losing a lot of fizz. When Varun went back to the drawing board, there were a couple of things that he had to ensure that he was able to fix so that he could come back and start taking wickets. For starters, he had to ensure that his googly was once again a lot more potent. The only way this was going to happen is that if the batters were a lot more wary about his leg break as well. And this meant that he had to change how he was bowling that leg break. Now, this has two main aspects. One is obviously being able to turn the ball, but more importantly, at what length are you bowling this delivery and also at what pace. The two things that stood out for why Varun Chakravarthy was getting hit a lot is that he kept missing his length, but also he was just not able to ball at the speeds that he used to. So the first thing that he had to rectify was ensuring that he's able to maintain that pace of 90 to 95 kilometers per hour. Now, how he did this was by ensuring that he made his run up a lot more streamlined. Not only was he ensuring that he was putting a lot more behind his body while just running into ball, but even apart from that, he made sure to use more of his lower body as compared to just using his shoulders to be able to generate pace. And why this is important is because if you're just going to use your shoulders to generate pace, you won't be able to get revs on the ball. The simple concept of a spinner being able to pivot means that they are able to get more revolutions on the ball, and for Varun to do that, he would have to generate force from his lower body. And the other thing is to do with side spin. Now, because his side spin was not proving to be as effective, he started to work on overspin or topspin. Now, earlier, Varun was a lot more focused on side spin, and that meant that he would release the ball and the seam would move in this kind of manner. However, what he now wanted to do was ensure that at the time of release, the ball is moving forward like this. And this would help for a couple of reasons. The first thing is that it would generate dip. Now with dip, what happens is that the ball pitches slightly before the batter anticipates it to. And the other thing that happens with dip is that after pitching, there is a likeliness of it to be able to bounce more. Along with this, Varun also spoke about how he was finding out that when he was using his top spin deliveries, he was getting the ball to turn a lot more, especially in the case of his leg break. And there's also a really good study by Himanish Ganju on the IPL and the impact of dip on spinners' deliveries and wicket taking. The first thing that you'll see here in these graphs is that it just takes a lot fewer balls to get wickets, especially if you're able to generate dip. Varun was someone who was consistently able to pitch the ball around that 5-meter mark. This is where the batters would get confused whether or not to play on the front foot or the back foot. And this is where he was able to exploit it at the pace that he balled, meaning that the batters just would not have enough time or quick thinking to be able to make decisions on how to play the ball. And the difference is minute. You'll see three graphs here. One is the 4 to 5 meter mark, one is the 5 to 6 meter mark, and one is the 6 to 7 meter mark. For various speeds, it's shown how much of an improvement dip can cause in terms of wicket taking. And if you remember, we spoke about how Varun Chakravarthy balled around that 90 to 95 km per hour mark, and that is when he was most effective. If you'll have a look at this graph, something you'll see is the kind of difference there is when you ball at that particular pace of 90 to 95 and how it impacts wicket taking. At the 4 to 5 meter mark, where the batters find it the toughest, the difference in deliveries taken to get a wicket decreases by 10.7. Whereas if you look at the 5 to 6 or 6 to 7 meter marks, it's barely 1 or 2. And so this highlights two things. Varun had to ensure that he was able to hit that 5 meter mark once again and do that at 90 to 95 kilometers per hour. That would be the main point of impact for him, and that would help him get a lot more wickets. Along with this, something that you also need to realize is that Varun is already very tough to pick off the hand. His leg break and googly are very similar at the point of release, and just from seeing the release, it would be next to impossible for a batter to be able to guess how to play the delivery. There's also a brilliant video by Decoding Cricket that breaks down how Varun's leg break is different from his googly and how you can identify it. The main cue has to do with how he uses his wrists. At the time of bowling his leg break, at the time of release, what Varun does is that he mostly uses his wrist, almost a flick of the wrist, to be able to ball that leg break. Whereas when it comes to the googly, he makes use of his thumb to be able to kind of flick the ball using just his fingers. And so the only cue that you get to see if he's going to bowl a leg break is that he corks his wrist at the time of his delivery stride. Whereas in the case of his googly, his wrist is not corked in any fashion. Along with this, Varun also has variations where he just balls a quicker yorker, something that he's also spoken about, and he balls this using a cross seam grip and he just releases the ball straight. And so it was eventually these changes that led to Varun being a new version of himself. The impact is also clear to see. When he came back in the Tamil Nadu Premier League of 2023, in 9 matches he picked up 13 wickets, but he once again got back his good economy rate of 6.5. Following that with TNPL of 2024, he once again picked up 12 wickets in 10 games at an impressive economy of just 6.6. But the real game changer was his IPL performances. Since the IPL of 2023, Varun Chakravarthy has been the highest wicket taker in the tournament to present day. In just 42 matches, he's picked up 58 wickets at an economy rate of 7.9. This when almost every team in every other game is getting a score of 200, and here's a man who's going at less than 8 runs to the over. Not only has he been the highest wicket taker in the period, but he also has the best bowling average and the 4th best bowling strike rate for any spinner in the IPL. The fact that his leg breaks became a lot more potent also helped him get a lot more wickets through the googly. ESPN talks about how in his first 4 seasons of IPL, he bowled 270 leg breaks and got just 6 wickets from these deliveries. Whereas in 2024 alone, in just 129 deliveries of leg breaks, he was already able to pick up 7 wickets and an additional 11 wickets through his googly. It is It is no surprise that he was then recalled to the Indian team, but this time with a lot more knowledge about his bowling, a lot more knowledge on how to go about bowling on different surfaces and different tactics for different batters. Varun is also someone who's a keen thinker of the game, and this is also reflective in a lot of interviews that not only he's given but also his coaches like AC Praatibh and also Carl Crow, who's KKR's spin bowling coach. As I already mentioned at the start of the video, ever since his comeback, he's been an absolute revelation. He's picked up 38 wickets in just 18 T20Is, and he also played a crucial part in India's Champions Trophy victory. All in all, Varun is definitely one of the best spinners in the country right now, and his mystery just keeps getting a lot more mysterious. Not only does he get wickets, but he's also able to be that bowler for India who's able to keep things tight in the middle overs and has become a crucial cog in this bowling lineup. With the T20 World Cup in the subcontinent next year, Varun is going to be an extremely important part for that Indian team if they want to retain that World Cup. What we do know is that he will be looking forward to this World Cup and will want to make things right, especially after how things ended for him in 2021. This has been a video on Varun Chakravarthy and how he's been able to absolutely turn things around for the better. If you like this video, definitely share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel most importantly, and leave your comments down below. We also have membership, so if you haven't signed up to that yet, definitely do it. It's just 159 rupees per month, and we will go deeper into these topics and a lot of cricket history. That's it from us, and we'll see you again. Peace.